Hey everyone, this is Alicia from RoyalWise.com, and I'd like to welcome you to the June QB Talks from Insightful Accountant. Let's dive in and get started. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. So for today's session, I want to give you a tour of a couple new features in QuickBooks Online. The Modern Invoices, which are available in all the different versions, and also the Fixed Asset Manager. And that's in QuickBooks Online Advanced. So a little bit about me as we get started and you're settling in. I am the co-host of the unofficial QuickBooks Accountants podcast with Hector Garcia, and you can find that on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere that you go to get your podcasts. In 2023, I was named to the top 50 women in accounting from Ignition, and I was a top 10 pro advisor from Insightful Accountant. And my own company is Royal Wise Solutions, and we do QBO training. We call our platform the OWLs, the on-demand web-based learning solutions. And in fact, we are the sponsor of this month's episode of QB Talks. So visit us at learn.royalwise.com. What we do is QuickBooks Online training, whether it's individual classes and webinars specifically for you or for your team. We have site-wide library memberships and for your clients as well. All of our training can be used by bookkeepers or by accountants. And if you're an accounting firm, we can even make a custom white labeled QuickBooks Online training portal so that you can manage your team and your client training all in-house. All right, so we're going to do this in two parts today. We're going to first take a look at the new Modern Invoices, and I'm really going to do a deep dive because there's a lot of misconception about them, so I want to really show what they do and how they work in detail. And then we're going to take a look at QuickBooks Online Advanced Fixed Asset Manager. So let's start with the Modern Invoices. And I'm going to say almost there because they are still a work in progress. And, honestly, it's been about a year and a half that they have been working on dialing these in, and they've really, really come a long way. I mean, yeah, there are still some things that the invoices that we're used to don't do, like price rules and like some of the features that were in the custom form styles where you could group things together and collapse your line items. So there's still some features that have not been baked into it yet, but it also does some things that the classic modern, no, let me get that right, that the classic invoice experience doesn't do. So I want to show you, it's kind of a different approach. So I'm going to head over into my sample file. It's kind of superhero themed. And let's go make a new invoice. I'm going to go up to the plus new button and choose invoice. And if yours comes up in the new modern layout, you can tell because it looks like a piece of paper. If you don't see this, then there'll also be a link in the top that you can go back, or that you can update your layout. And at the moment, some files can also go back, but eventually you won't be able to make that change back. If you have some features enabled, like price rules, you can't even go to these invoices. But they do now honor things like progress invoicing, where in the beginning you couldn't even do that, but now they do. So the kind of the idea here is that it's a more user-friendly layout for business owners. I mean, all of us accountants, we like all the efficient, just the fields. We don't need all the fancy stuff. But for business owners, it helps them see what they're giving to their clients. And to that effect, you'll see across the top, there's different buttons here. Now, I haven't made the invoice yet, so I'm going to make the invoice first, and then we'll go take a look at all of the different features everywhere. Now, my deck is kind of superhero themed here, so we are going to do some work for Gotham City today. And notice that there's a field here for the email. I'm going to go ahead and just put in my own company email just so I don't send something out into the ether. And we have our standard fields here for shipping date, tracking number. Now, those are consolidated, so they look a little bit nicer. And then you have your invoice, your terms, your date, and your due date over on the right-hand side. Now, something that is new is if you don't have an email address for the customer. No, let me go ahead and actually delete that. And there's no address here either in Gotham City. So something that's new is this new edit customer link right down here at the bottom. And when I click that, it opens up your customer pane. So you don't have to go to another tab and go get the information. You don't have to shut the invoice, go to the customer and update it. It's all right here for you. So I'm going to go ahead and put in that same email address. And I could go through and put in all the other things that you're used to tracking for that individual customer. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just save that work right there. And now notice that the email address just popped up into place. And if I had taken the time to add an address, that would show up here too. So huge time saver to be able to update these default information fields right from the screen. Okay, it does honor your tags. And then we come down to our products and services. Now we are going to do a heroic deed for Gotham City. Notice that this one's set up for revenue recognition, which we talked about in QB Talks a couple months ago. So definitely go check out that video if you want to see a deep dive into revenue recognition. And this heroic deed is not going to be in outer space. So we're just going to go ahead and fight some monsters. And now $10,000 is definitely not enough for fighting a monster. So let's go ahead and charge them $50,000. That's not $500,000. Let's get a 50 in there. Okay. And you can toggle on and off the tax right there. Now let's add a second item as well. In order to do this, we're going to also need some dilithium crystals, and so we'll add an extra $1,000 for that. So now I have 2 items on my invoice. As you go, it will keep adding extra lines, but notice that there is a product and service button right here, so you can continue to add additional lines. You can also rearrange the lines by grabbing onto the dots in the corners right there. And here's something that a lot of people don't realize is there. Let me go back to this line 3. And there is a drop down here to add subtotals. So your invoices now do have subtotals just like the old experience did. I have some extra lines here, so I'm going to go ahead and trash can those extra lines. Well, you know what? But if I do want to see a subtotal for that, but I have an extra charge, let's go ahead and add one more line to that as well. I keep doing the same thing. Here we go. In the line, let's see, I'm going to need a new lightsaber to do the job as well. Okay, so $51,000 for the supplies, and I'm going to have them throw in a lightsaber. Okay, so now I have my subtotal right down here. As I scroll down, there's actually a lot of communication happening on this invoice. There's now 4 different boxes with 4 different places to add messages. The first one is specifically about how you want to get paid. So if there's an address that you want them to send the check, you would put that in there. If you had QuickBooks payments turned on here, you would say, well, go ahead and use your credit card or your ACH and whatever messages you wanted to send with that. There's a note to the customer. And here's where you can say thank you for your business, or you can have any message that you want specifically to them. So I'll say, thank you for your business. We are happy to save your world. Okay. And I'll actually go up in here. Please remit by ACH or credit card. Okay. Now, here's something that's cool. Internal customer notes hidden from your customer. So if you need to communicate some things to the rest of your staff about this invoice, then you can go ahead and add it here. Please get a blue lightsaber. Okay, so now that's just internal. The customer never sees that. Now we have a 4th field, memo on statement. If you send statements to your customers, and a statement is kind of a billing history or an invoicing history where you can tell them what their balances are or what their how much they owe over multiple invoices, or maybe it's just a record of all of the transactions throughout the year. When that invoice is listed, you have a place where you can specify what you want it to say about that invoice. That's another method of communication that wasn't available before. And let's see, what should I put on this one? Memo on statement, um, heroic deed, and lightsaber. Okay. There's also a place to put in attachments, and when you do add an attachment, you can choose to send it with the email or not. Let me go ahead and add an attachment to this. I'm just going to pick a random image from my computer to add to it. But now I have the ability to attach that to the email as well. All right. Now, going back up to the next section, we have the fields over at the bottom right. There's the subtotal right here, so we know how much the subtotal is. But this customization all happens under this little manage button right up here. So this manage button is more important than almost anything on this invoice. When I click on manage, it takes me down this pane right here. I'm going to actually be systematic as I go through this pane and explain it to you. So I know that I just kind of introduced this little section, but everything we do is going to affect that as we go. The very first thing I want you to notice is that edit default settings. There's an important distinction here. All of these options are just on this one invoice. The idea is that you can make changes to the invoice on a case-by-case basis. If you want to make the changes permanent across all of your invoices, you don't do it right here. You have to go to this edit default settings link up here at the top, which will open up a different window and a different tab, and then take us into our account and settings so that we can do all the things that we want to do about, do you accept discounts or not? Do you put in deposits or not? So this way you can customize what it looks like across all of your invoices. I'll go ahead and save those changes that I just made and say done. Then when I go back to the invoice that I was working on, okay, and let's see, I better save it before I refresh it. So there's a little save button down here at the bottom, and I'll click on save. So now it is saving it. Okay, it's also saying that because I have revenue recognition on, I have to turn on that service date column from customization. So I'm going to go to customization. I'm going to turn on that service date and then head back down here. And because this one has a revenue recognition item, it has to have a service date so it knows when to do all of the deferred revenue transactions. So I'm going to put in today's date, and now I'll save it again. Oh, maybe more of them are of that. So let's put today's date there as well. Okay. So now that I have that date in there, hey, look, I can actually view my revenue recognition. And now it's going to show me how it's going to recognize it month by month by month on that schedule. Now, I don't want to get into the whole thing about revenue recognition, but basically what this is saying is that I have the whole charge. It's going to the liability account, and then every single month it's going to move this amount to revenue automatically for me. Let me close that pane. All right, so that takes me back to saving the invoice. So now it's in here and I don't have to worry about it. And we are now back to the customization section. So let me head back where we were. And even though we have default settings across the whole thing, these panes are now about this one particular invoice. That means that I can turn off the ship to on just this invoice. I'm going, I don't know why that happened, but I'm going to just roll with it for now. I can turn on and off the invoice number from showing. Most of the time you do want the invoice number to show, but maybe you have a reason for hiding it. You can turn off the due date. You can hide the terms. You can hide the service date, but I need it for this one for revenue recognition, so I won't do that. And I can also turn on the SKU number as well. If you have custom fields or you need custom fields, you can go ahead and let me go ahead and save that. That's what I've done so far. I can click on manage the custom fields, and that will take me over to my custom fields screen, and I can go ahead and add custom fields or apply my custom fields. Okay, back to my invoice. All right. Oh, I need to get back to my invoice. All right. Now, next part, back to the customization. Okay, we did everything under customization. Now, the next thing that we have control over is our payment options for this particular invoice. I don't have QuickBooks Payments set up on this file, but if I did, I would be able to specify whether I wanted them to be able to pay by credit card or pay by ACH or both. So you can turn it on and off specifically on the one invoice. Or if you wanted to change your defaults, you would use this payment details manage, and then it would take you into accountant settings payments and allow you to permanently turn off credit cards or permanently turn off ACH if you wanted to. One of the things, you know what, I better click on that because I have something else I need to show you here. And I'm going to just get out of my full screen here because I need it like that. Okay. Is you also now have the ability to accept PayPal and Venmo through these new invoices. Venmo is not available in the other experience, and neither was PayPal. You had to manage your PayPal outside the whole system. So now you have it all right inside your invoice. Once you have this on, you can set your defaults for which ones you want on and off. And then that, of course, will come back to your invoices. But it's nice that once you are set up, you have this manage paying that you can say on this particular invoice, you can only pay with this particular payment method. Now, heading down here, we also have toggles to show the invoice total or not. I don't know why you would turn it off, but you can. Maybe you want to take a deposit. You can now turn on the deposit. And if you click on manage, look at this. You can say right here that they are putting in, they're giving me a check for a deposit. And I'm going to put that straight into either undeposited funds, which is your good habit. So I'll go ahead and I'll put that in undeposited funds. And they're going to give me a $10,000 deposit. So you can manage that right from here. Okay. There's also the option for a shipping fee. If you want to add shipping for your lightsaber, I'll go ahead and I'll add on $25 just to ship the lightsaber. Okay. Next, there's an option for multi-currency. Avoid it unless you really, really need it, because once multi-currency is on, it's permanently on. All right, our next section is design. This is specific to the layout of the invoice itself. And right now, in its infancy, there is only one invoice layout that you can use, and that's the Modern Invoice, which was actually kind of the default and the most popular one that most people were using anyway, so there's not a whole lot of change there. But it does mean that you don't get a whole lot of freedom right now about what it looks like. If you had other custom form styles that you were using, you can still use those, but you don't get advantage of the buttons up here on the left that I'm about to show you when we're all said and done. What you can do, though, is you can change your accent color. So if blue is not your thing, you can go to teal or red or whatever colors you would like to see there. And it does change on this invoice as well. So you can change your colors. You just don't get any control now on the overall appearance of it. Okay, next, scheduling. You can set this up as a recurring invoice right from here. Instead of from the bottom where it said make recurring, it's now in this sidebar. You also have options for print later and send later. I have heard people say that, oh, I can't use them because I need these options. They have built them in. This is relatively new. This has only been there for a couple months. You also can control your reminders from here. But remember that your invoice reminders are not just for this one invoice. Reminders are for the whole entire system of all of your invoices. So I am looking forward to the day when I can just set, yes, I want reminders on this one, or no, I don't want reminders on this other invoice. Please go up to the feedback up here and let them know. In fact, I'll go ahead and do that. I would like to be able to turn on invoice reminders on a case-by-case basis. Since I have some customers I want to send to, but other invoices are placeholders. Okay, so something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that they know that this needs to be on an individual basis. So they do tell you right there. Changes made here will apply to all outstanding and future invoices. Okay. The next one that's here is customer reports. This is kind of nice. Check this out. I can see all of the open invoices for, let's save my changes. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so some new buttons. Open invoices will now open up a new tab. No, didn't open up a new tab. It will now go and run in report of all of my open invoices for that customer. And I'll hit my back button and go back to my invoice. And there's also a report down at the bottom for all transactions. It would be nice if that opens up in a new tab instead of in my invoice, so I'm going to suggest that in a minute. And here are all of my transactions for that customer. So the beautiful part of this is that, again, I don't need to leave the invoice and go to another tab and go look up the customer and then go find the transactions. I can do that all from right here. And let's go up to feedback and say, when looking at the customer reports, please open them in a new tab. Okay, and please submit that feedback as well. All right. Now that we have this saved invoice, let's turn our attention up to the upper left-hand column, or upper left-hand side, and edit is the one that we're on right now. The email view shows you what is going to be sent to your customers. And so this is the default message that comes from your settings. When you actually send it, though, you do have the ability to add additional text here. So this isn't that, so you can modify it. There's a PDF view. This shows you what your customer is going to see. And the payer view is when they click review and pay to use QuickBooks Online Merchant Services, this is now what they will see when they're here. And so they can view the invoice, download the invoice, print the invoice, and they can even sign in and it'll use their saved information. But now you see what they're going to see in their experience. So it's completely transparent. I'll go back to edit again. Down at the bottom, we have a couple more links for print and download, and also print a packing slip. And the packing slip looks like this. So it doesn't have any prices on it. It's basically the page that you put in the box. Okay. Now that we have looked at most of the settings for the invoices, I do want to point out that there is also a recent transactions button, so you can go find other invoices that you've done recently. And here's the most important part. Okay, everybody ready? this actions button right here and the status button right here. Now I'm going to start with the status. Notice that these two buttons were not here when I originally made my invoice. These two buttons do not appear until it's been saved. Once it's been saved, you now have a new status where you can see the activity. Now, right now, there hasn't been any activity. I haven't saved it. They haven't opened it. They haven't viewed it. But what you would see here is the dates and the times for when they opened, when you sent it, when they opened it, when they viewed it, when they paid it, and when it was deposited. So you can get the dates and times for every activity along the way. So if the client says, oh, no, I never got that invoice, you can say, oh, by the way, you saw it on June 13th at 10 a.m. And then you know that they know. Okay, now this actions button, don't overlook it. It's all the good stuff. When I click on actions, now I have receive a payment, make a copy, delete it, void it, audit history, and the transaction journal. It has all of the same features that used to be down under the More button at the very, very bottom. So here is my transaction journal with all of my debits and credits happening on this invoice. Look how complicated this one is. Look at all that stuff going in and out, sales of product, deferred revenue, inventory, all the good stuff. Now I'm going to go back to the invoice. Let me click on it this way and get there. Okay, good. And so don't overlook that actions button. Personally, I want them to move this actions button either up here back in this toolbar or down under the down at the bottom where it used to be for the More button, because if you don't have this open, it looks like you can't actually do anything. And so that's why some people get frustrated, because they think that you can't do all of these things. It's just a matter of clicking on Manage in order to get to Actions. You can also have actions. There's some actions down here under these buttons. The Save button that I used earlier has Save and New and Save and Close. So it's our traditional green button. It's just been moved over and it's not green anymore. The green button now has Review and Send, which is how you send the invoice. So that's the familiar screen where you can now customize the subject line, customize the email body. You can see the attachments, all of that same stuff that you're used to. I'm going to go ahead and click back. Also under this button is Receive Payment and Share Link. Now, sharing a link is something that I don't know if you have started doing yet, but this is great if you want to send somebody just a link to make their payment. You can copy this by clicking Copy Link, and then you can text it to somebody, or you can email it to somebody, and then they just have that link and they can go ahead and run the payment. The millennials like this one a lot. And then last but not least, here's Receive Payment. The Receive Payment looks just like the Receive Payment window that you are used to. You can see a couple subtle things which show that it's now using the new modern technology behind the scenes, because one of the reasons why so much is changing in QBO right now is because they're rewriting let me say this right, they're rewriting the underlying code, because it used to be, Hector Garcia described it as monolithic, that it was one giant code base, and what they're doing is they're making all the code for all of the forms modular so that each of the teams in the development sector can address one thing without affecting everything. So that's one of the reasons why the code is getting modernized. So the receive payment part here is very much like you are used to. We'll choose a payment method. They are going to write me a check for this. I did 1, 2, 3, 4 before, so 1, 2, 3, 5. I'll deposit it to undeposited funds, because that's a best practice never to put it in your checking account so that the bank feeds can match it. And instead of paying in full, they're just going to make a partial payment. Don't forget that these are little calculators. I can say divided by 2, tab, and now they're making me a partial payment. and I will save and close that payment. And then let's go back and look at the invoice again. I'm going to go up to my magnifying glass and pull up the invoice that I just worked on. And now that it has a partial payment, it says partially paid right here. And when I scroll down to the bottom, I can now see the payment that was made. And I can click on that to open up the payment. And here's this edit totals button. I'm not even sure what that one does. Oh, that's for going back and editing this pane to change what you see all over here. So that is your tour of the new invoices. If you have more than one invoice, you will also now have arrows right here at the top. So where this says invoice 1011, if I had more than one invoice, it would now allow me to scroll through and move from invoice to invoice. So that is the new invoice experience. I'm going to go ahead and save and close. All right. All right, now we're going to shift gears a little bit and we're going to talk about the fixed asset manager. The fixed asset manager is a way of automating your depreciation entries. It's brand new. It is still in its infancy, so it's a great time to add in feedback so they can craft it to your liking. And it is only in QuickBooks Online Advanced. So if you have a client who has a lot of large purchases and you are managing all of their depreciation on spreadsheets, this may be a very good reason to move over to QuickBooks Online Advanced. So let's go take a look. The fixed asset manager is under advanced accounting, and here's fixed assets. I already have one in place, and let's go take a look at it, and then we'll actually build one. So they bought a Mercedes Sprinter. There's two tabs up here at the top, the setup and the schedule. And because this is so new, right now, once you've set it up, you can't edit it. But as you can see, they are working on it. In the description, I have the VIN number for the vehicle, the purchase price, the purchase date, the start date of the depreciation, and you can even choose what depreciation method you want. You'll put in the useful life for how many years it will be depreciated. And then also if your salvage value is not 0, you have a place for that. So here I can see the depreciation amount. So this is the calculation according to your method and your length. And then you also, here I can see which asset account it went into and the depreciation expense account. Now, then I can go to the schedule and it shows me all of the depreciation entries that are being made on a year-by-year basis. So I can see that these 3 have been made and here are the ones still to go. And because this particular asset had a 10-year life, you can see all the depreciation entries to come up in all the years to come. But let's go ahead and make one now. Notice you have the ability to do one asset or you can add multiples all at the same time. So there is a whole grid here where you can add in all of your multiple assets. If you have a CSV file for it, you can even import a whole CSV of all of this already pre-set up. And just make sure your columns match, and then you'll be good to go. So you can do a whole lot of bulk entry all at once. You can also customize the columns. So if you don't want to see any of these 3, there's some things here that are required, but if there are, you can take away some of them. All right, now I'm going to close that, and I'm actually going to back out of here. And we're going to go ahead and just do one fixed asset. So back to the fixed asset manager. And we will add an asset. And let's put in the Batmobile since we're working in Gotham City. So the Batmobile. We need a VIN number. I'm just going to randomly type. Okay. If it's a non-depreciable asset, you could do that, but obviously the whole point of what we want to do here is make it depreciable. This is a, let's say it was $1 million to get a Batmobile. And I purchased it today. Actually, let's go back to the beginning of the month. I'm going to type the letter M, and that will back me up to the beginning of June. The depreciation start date is going to start from the first day of the life of the product. You may have scenarios where yours is different. And now here are your depreciation methods. You can do straight line, you can do double declining, and you can do 150% accelerated. Let's go ahead and do a double declining on it. Now, what is the useful life of my Batmobile? I would say that the Batmobile is probably good for maybe 5 years before the technology is outdated and I have to go get a new one. And the salvage value, even after the end of that 5 years, it's still going to be worth $250,000. Okay. My asset account is where I want it to go. And now I'm personally a fan of different fixed assets for each of the fixed assets if you only have a handful of them. I mean, if you've got like 20 or 30, that's going to be unreasonable. But I'm OCD. I personally don't like to see just all of my vehicles in one vehicles category and then all of my equipment in one equipment category and then one accumulated depreciation for all of them. That makes me nuts because that means later on if I sell them, I have work to do. So I personally make new fixed assets for most of the things that I do. Notice that this fixed asset window is that chart of accounts experience that was the new experience, but they went back to the old experience. So it's a little inconsistent here. But this is fixed assets and this is a vehicle. So I will make it a vehicle and I will call it Batmobile. It doesn't need a description. We know what that is. And then I will save it. Okay, now check this out. It actually gives me the ability to pick the accumulated depreciation account. Now I could have just one accumulated depreciation across all of my fixed assets, but like I said, I like to have separate ones. So here is going to be my accumulated depreciation for just the Batmobile. And the way that I make that happen is where it says save account under, I'm going to drop down fixed assets and put it underneath the Batmobile. So this is going to be the Batmobile depreciation right there. And I will save that. And then the depreciation expense account, now that is just my generic depreciation. All of that goes into one other expense down at the bottom of my profit and loss report. Okay, so that is how to set up my fixed asset. And then I need to save it. And once I have saved it, it now has a schedule. And now I can see each of my depreciation entries, $33,000 a month. But then because I'm doing double declining, then it goes to 20,000. Then it goes to 12,000. Then it goes to, by the time I'm done, just a little remainder right there. So if it was straight line declining, it would have just been an equal amount through the whole life, but I chose double, so it's going to do heavy depreciation in the first year's worth and then go down from there. So I did that because I wanted to show you how fancy it is. And close. So now I have my two fixed assets. I can see a report right here from the see a report list. And now this is giving me a list of all of mine. I'm going to go ahead and let's say all dates so that I can see all of them. So here's my Batmobile and here is my Sprinter van. And I have all the information that I need right there about it. Double declining, useful life, pretty much everything that I would want to see, and even the net book value and the period depreciation entries. So lots of information about your fixed assets. All right. So hopefully seeing these two features gives you some new BAT tools to put in your BAT belt. And thank you for coming today. I would love it, as the sponsor of QB Talks this month, if you would take a look at some of the other trainings that we offer at royalwise.com. One of the things that we have is a book that you can have literally as a desk reference, although it's available on Kindle as well. And this is a great place where you can go look up these new invoices. They're in there. Or it's great for your new employees. It's great for your clients. If you have clients doing hands-on work in their files, it gives them something they can hold in their hand and look things up, which they absolutely love. It even has an accounting glossary in the back. And if you do want to give them as client gifts, we can contact us because we can order them in wholesale for you. So thank you for attending QB Talks in June, and I will see you in July.